I have one motion this evening to bring forward. On the docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to declare the police department firearms that are no longer serviceable as surplus for trade-in or resale value.
Second.
In speaking with the police chief over this, probably a month ago now, that these firearms will bring quite a decent amount of money, which will offset the purchase of the weapons that they've bought. And if the calculation is right, it will knock that appropriation down to around 15,000, 15, 16 from 24, was it? 23, 24. So they have a substantial value in today's market. So that's where they're going. The money we appropriated will be returned, any leftover money. Any comments or questions?
Not for me.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. That is all the business I have for public safety emergency management this evening.
Call for adjournment.
Adjournment? Call for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Gotta get used to this seat. 7:02.
I'd like to call Public Works Committee to order at 7:02. I actually have 3 items of business this evening to pass along to my members of my committee, who are Vice President Parika and Councilor Dolan. Yes, I memorized it. Welcome. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $12,425 from account 1650100-511000, Park and Forestry, salary and wages to the following: $5,425 to account 1650100-549140, Park and Forestry, small equipment; $7,000 to account 1650100-546010, Park and Forestry, supplies, grounds.
Second.
Thank you. Actually, this is the first time I've ever gotten any business from Acting Superintendent Dennis Walsh. And this is probably his last motion to ask for, I would think. I'm hoping for him, for his sake anyways. So this is to replace some equipment to the park, replacement of equipment for the Parks Department, a co-aerator and a small utility trailer. Both items are over 25 years old and in poor condition. Glad at 25 I wasn't in poor condition. But the trailer moves mowers back and forth among the park facilities on a daily basis, and the core aerator is a Land Pride 2560-82, and that would cost $3,450. And their 3-point hitch aerator is an attachment to our tractor to aerate the park facilities. He's requesting to transfer the $7,000 to replace $2,000 of internal funds that were previously transferred to purchase supplies to repair equipment, and $5,000 to build up the park ground supply. Perfect. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Secondly, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $9,000 from account 1124100-578300, Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer, to account 1420100-530101, Public Works Professional Services, regarding the need to replenish funds that were previously expended due to emergency repairs to a traffic signals.
Second.
Thank you. Back on October 25th, the traffic signals at South Main Street at Locust had began to malfunction and continuously failed in flash mode, and about the same time the traffic signals on Olive and County Street were not cycling correctly. Due to the emergency of the nature, the repairs needed, and in order to initiate the purchase order quickly, DPW used its professional services account in the amount of $9,000. So they're just putting everything back in because they had used them as an emergency. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is approved. Thirdly, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $19,896.12 from account 6000-578300, Wastewater Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund, regarding the need to replenish previously expended funds and future funds to pay unexpected legal fees due to a dispute filed by an abutter to the new sludge landfill.
Second?
Thank you. These were, obviously, it states it's unexpected legal fees, and this is actually for the November receipts. So we will be getting, we should expect more for December and for January. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I don't have any other motions this evening, but I would like to acknowledge our DPW and their efforts, and actually the DPW department, and also all the private contractors that came out and worked in that crazy storm that we had on Thursday, as you all know. But DPW did a phenomenal job cleaning our roads and our sidewalks. They do have an order to which they follow. So they go out there and they clean our streets first, obviously, to make sure that they're safe and clear. And then once they're cleared, then they start working on our sidewalks. And they start with the sidewalks beginning usually closest to the schools, because more children that live closer to schools tend to be walking as opposed to the children that live farther away. So they do as much as they can. They did such a phenomenal job. I mean, they were out there all Friday, Saturday night. I know they're out cleaning cul-de-sacs because the snow is coming down so quickly and so heavily that as they were pushing it around, they really had nowhere to put it. So in the cul-de-sacs, they have to just push it and push it. So Saturday they went out with the big trucks and they dug them all out, and they just made these big mounds. So now some people might have little mountains in the front of their yard, and the kids are sliding down into their yard, which is great, but it's not blocking their mailboxes, it's not blocking their driveways. But it just took a little bit of time, but they did a great job. I know they were out there Saturday night well into Sunday morning, and I just want to give them kudos. And just to let you know, I was just informed that excuse me, beginning tomorrow, they're actually going into like a flood mode type thing, because, you know, with the melting snow, we're going to get a lot of flooding going on. So just be aware of that. So they're going to be watching for flooding control in the drains. They're going to go out and start clearing those as well. I just wanted to make mention of that. That's all the business I have for this evening. I'd like to call for an adjournment at 7:08.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:08. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to call the Zoning and Land Use Committee to order. Members present here, myself, at 7:08. Members here are myself, Councilor Hall, Councilor Delicio. This evening I have two motions. The first one from the docket of January 2nd, 2018. I entertain a motion to approve a letter of non-opposition from the Attleboro Municipal Council to Ashley Driscoll, Director of the Leonard J. Irving Center, 81 West Street, Suite 2112, Attleboro, Mass., relative to locating a registered marijuana dispensary at 70 Frank Mossberg Drive in Attleboro, Mass.
Second.
All right, with this motion, I'd also like to read in a letter we received, the zoning committee received from the building inspector. And it, just read this into record. It is regarding 220 O'Neill Boulevard, zoning letter RMD. And this is Zoning and Land Use Chair. The property located at 220 O'Neill Boulevard is located in an industrial zone with all property lines bordered by industrial zones. The property is located in an approved zone for registered medical marijuana dispensaries per Attleboro zoning ordinance 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses. However, the property is located less than 500 feet from a recreation facility in which children commonly congregate. The facility is Butler's Gymnastic located at 185 East Street. I would suggest that a variance be required before any building permit is issued. Sincerely, the building inspector. So with this item, I'm supporting moving this out of committee, but I would like to warn people that encourage people to watch the meeting from a couple months ago where the city solicitor came and explained exactly how we needed to vote when voting for a special permit. And if you recall, there were 6 items that everybody had to vote on. And the 5th item was regarding the specifics according to our ordinances. I have them here. But one of them was that the registered marijuana dispensary couldn't be near a place where children congregate. And so without a variance, I think we might struggle to approve the special permit later on, but that I don't feel that should stop us from voting it out of committee. So are there any other comments?
Just a point of clarification, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. You said the letter from the building inspector said that the property was O'Neill Boulevard? But
Yes.
the letter from Ashley Driscoll is 70 Mossberg?
Oh, did I read so,
I just want to make sure we're voting on the...
and it is entirely possible I read the wrong one. I did. Mr. President, should I?
So I would just read
the correct one.
The correct one, and to let the record reflect that you did receive something from the building inspector relative
We'll
to
read that for the next one.
the Leonard J. Irving Center.
So, what's that?
That's a guy.
So I'm going to read so there's 2 of these that we're doing tonight. Both of them have letters from the building inspector, and so I'm going to read the correct one. And this one is to the Zoning and Land Use Committee Chair, 70 Frank Mossberg Drive, zoning letter for Two Friends Farm, RMD. Zoning and Land Use Chair. The property located at 70 Frank Mossberg Drive is located in an industrial zone with all property lines bordered by industrial zones. The property is located in an approved zone for registered medical marijuana dispensaries per Attleboro zoning ordinance 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses. However, the property is located less than 1,000 feet from another approved RMD located at 34 Extension Street. I would suggest that a variance be required before any building permit is issued. So again, it's the same thing when it comes time to vote on the special permit. Without a variance, that might be difficult, but it shouldn't prevent us from voting it out of committee. So, any other comments? Yes.
Great job.
Yeah,
It's so
great
hard to
job.
get those things. You did a great job, and I just want to say a great job to everybody that's participated in this process, the planning department, the building inspector. We finally have it going into sync, and I think it shows it's obvious that we have got the process down pretty good, so thank you for that.
Any other comments?
You know.
You know.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Aye. All right, the second motion here. Also from the docket of January 2nd, I entertain a motion to approve a letter of non-opposition from the Attleboro Municipal Council to Canatech Medicinals of Fall River, P.O. Box 9639, Fall River, Massachusetts, 02702, relative to locating a registered marijuana dispensary at 220 O'Neill Boulevard, Attleboro, Massachusetts.
Second.
In order. And this is, Mr. President, should I reread the, okay. Now it's all. Yeah, I was very organized just a minute ago.
It's so easy to become disorganized really quick.
Especially when you live by a computer and then you have to
Come and use
learn by
paper.
paper.
Right?
And it's cumbersome.
All right. So, to the zoning, so this is a letter received from the building inspector on January 2nd regarding 220 O'Neill Boulevard zoning, letter RMD. To the zoning and land use chair, the property located at 220 O'Neill Boulevard is located in an industrial zone with all property lines bordered by industrial zones. The property is located in an approved zone for registered medical marijuana dispensaries per Attleboro zoning ordinance 17-10.15, registered marijuana dispensary uses. However, the property is located less than 500 feet from a recreational facility in which children commonly congregate. The facility is Butler's Gymnastics, located at 182 East Street. I would suggest that a variance be required before any building permit is issued. And again, it's the same thing as before, that I think we should vote this out and not prevent it. Any other comments? Yes.
Yes, and just addition to that, Mr. Chair, you do have two host agreements also, which is the requirement that goes along with each of them. In addition to the declaration from the inspector, you also have the host agreements that have been signed by the mayor, which is a requirement before we can move on with the letter.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
So Todd, the building inspector doesn't say with reference to, because we had just approved a host agreement down on Frank Mossberg Drive, and that like completely abuts a golf course, and that's where, I mean, when you say congregate, so I know it's really not up to us right now, it's not, but he doesn't mention anything about, like, the definition. What's the definition of congregating? Because a school is only opened for a little period of time, like a gymnastics school is opened up for short periods of time, actually.
I will
And a
read
golf
from
course. That's all right. I'm just-
17.10.15. So one of the requirements is that the building needs to be 1,000 feet from a parcel on which another registered marijuana dispensary is 1,000 feet, and then item F is that it must be 500 feet from any public park, recreational area, or facility in which children commonly congregate.
Yeah.
Like you said, and that's Butler's
are.
Gymnastics has, there's children there.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to follow this through to see what the difference between that and, like, because kids play golf all the time in
Right.
high school. So it'd be just interesting to watch how this all plays out. Yeah, very interesting.
I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not the zoning board or the planning department feels that Butler's Gym, they'll have to have that dialogue when the application comes forward about their position on, and we'll have a hearing on whether or not the public thinks that's an area that children commonly congregate is the Butler School of Gymnastics. And I'm not sure, I mean, I know where they both are, but how far away
Yeah.
they are, it's probably close, it's 500 feet, right?
Yes.
500
Yeah, so
feet
it's
is what the
probably
regulations
close to
do.
almost that away. Wouldn't you well, maybe not the back of that lot, I don't know how deep it is, so
Yeah.
could be closer. So time will tell, I guess.
Thank you.
So for those interested to rewatch the meeting, it was where the solicitor explained the details of how the vote would be conducted for the special permit. That meeting was on October 24th last year. So it's interesting to rewatch that, but I don't have any other comments. Does anyone else?
There was also something about the 500 feet. Does it start at the door, the property line? Wasn't there something to do with that?
I'll defer to the previous chair.
Thank you. Yes, there is there's several, I don't want to say conflicts, but challenges that have to be tightened up. And actually, when I get to talking about, I'm going to give an update of one of the ordinances that I'm working on, which is going to be the recreational. And part of that is to tighten up and to, I don't want to say tighten up, to modify the current RMD ordinance. In doing this process, we discovered some of these things. And now, and that's the way it goes. As Vice President Parecka, the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro. So they're constantly in revision, and constantly as we bring things forward, we do have that opportunity to fix the things that so one of the things I'm asking for in particular, I can say it now, is that any kind of measuring that we do, I've asked to have the building inspector and the planning department chief to come up with a standard way, and all of our ordinances, unless there's a reason for it not to be, should have a standard way of measuring it, and everybody should know that. So that's part of what we're discussing.
Thank you, Chairperson Kopis. So I think some of these questions, stem from our initial from our very first host agreement, and these were questions that I had, and I'm grateful to the new ordinance chair and that was the recommendation. There was a common practice that we utilized, but then there was what Mass General Law and what our ordinance stated. There was some confusion there, so I'm grateful, and I'm looking forward to, and I would call it tightening it up and defining it and making it much clearer. And I do again appreciate the letters and the recommendation from Bill to have, okay, it doesn't necessarily line up, so this is what you have to do. Like when we had that conversation initially way back when, we needed to, that was what my request was all right, if it doesn't match up, so let's file for a zoning, an appeal on that. And so I'm grateful to see that those steps are being made as we progress forward, so thank you for that. And thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Really nice job running this committee tonight. I know you're kind of jumping in midstream, but I echo.
Welcome to council.
Welcome to council.
Handle medical marijuana.
It's a rite of passage these days. But I actually raised a concern on BCWC about the golf course, and it was something that I continued to raise because I have that concern. Just because there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into this. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we need to remove any ambiguity. So I was glad to hear Councilor Hall, glad to hear your comments. I think what we need to do, the most important thing is to continue to work with the building department, the planning department, and it's great to have that support, because I think the key to this, and I don't want to reiterate what everyone else said, but having those standards is going to be key, especially as we go forward. So I'll help any way I can in that.
Perfect. And I do agree that we need to have those standards. It needs to be well-defined. I do have concerns that variances should be relatively uncommon, and this is two of them right in a row. But
Agreed.
I don't think we should prevent voting out of committee and trying to send this letter of non-opposition. So are there any other comments?
Well, oops.
Councilor Cox.
Thank you, Council Cobus. Having spent several years on the Zoning Board of Appeals and having had to decide on several variances and many special permits, the system is designed to allow fairness in cases where standards don't make any sense. Now, we set these standards because we need to have guidelines to go by. But sometimes, like for example, I think Councilor Cooper said that the school might be like almost 500 feet. Well, in the case where you have a standard that's 500 feet and the school is 499 feet, do you think maybe we should give them a variance? So that's the purpose of the Zoning Board of Appeals, is to give a little common sense to the law. So while variances, you said, are rare, granting them is not a rare event. It's the necessity of them that is rare. So don't be thinking in your mind that this is two cases of extremely rare circumstances. They may not be, or they may be. And that concludes my comments.
And the fact that the inspector did come in and notify us and the applicant that there's a concern, it also allows that when they do go and prepare their site, that they can modify that site with the inspector to get it into compliance, so that they may not perhaps even need the variance. So everybody from up front knows what the score is, if you would. So thank you. That ends my comments.
Which is why I wanted to make sure they were read into the record today.
Right.
Alicia.
Would like to build on Councilor Holmes' point. I think when we're talking about standards, we're talking about, is it from the front door, the back door, the kitchen door? I think that's really what we need to be focusing in on, because the distances are already in the ordinance. That's already there. The question that I think Councilor Jackson raised, I raised, Councilor Holmes raised, was where does the measurement start? Because, yeah, that could be the difference between 499 or 502. So I think that's an important point to look at.
Perfect. Any further comments? Hearing none. Put it out for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. And that concludes my business for tonight. So, motion to adjourn.
Second.
The zoning, All those in favor?
Aye,
Zoning and Land Use Committee is adjourned at 7:25.
good job.
Would you like,
Great job.
can we let Diana go? Because she has got guests.
Yep. We should.
Is that okay? Thank you. I call the Personnel and Human Services Committee to order at, what do you say, 7:30?
7:25.
Committee members are Councilor Reynolds and Councilor Blair. From the docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to confirm the temporary appointment of Michael Tyler, 196 County Street, Attleboro, Massachusetts, to fill an unexpired term of Superintendent of Public Works, term to expire February 2020. The city's pretty familiar with Mr. Tyler, and he's actually here right now. I'm hoping that he can step forward and we can ask him any questions and just get to know him a little bit more. But I think most people do know him, so welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Councilor Holmes and members of the Attleboro City Council. I'm very excited to be here. I'm willing to offer any comments or questions.
So, thank you for coming, Mike. If you could just name and address for the record, and then just introduce yourself to the community, what your job is, what your experience is, where you came from, and anything like that would be great, and then we can
Absolutely.
ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. My name is Mike Tyler. I live at 196 County Street in Attleboro. I'm married with 3 children. I have 16 years in the municipal, I should say public service. I started my career out in 2002, working for the town of Rehoboth. I started my way as a truck driver up to laborer, operator, crew chief, foreman, and then acting superintendent for 4 years. I left Rehoboth a little over a year ago and became the assistant superintendent for the town of Seacon. My job basically entailed all the budgeting, all the Chapter 90, any type of FEMA reimbursement, and coming up with a complex and complete snow removal program for both. I think we were very successful in doing that. During my tenure, we dealt with 2010 floods in Rehoboth that decimated Rehoboth at the time. The department did a great job rebuilding that. Out of the 24 damaged facilities, the highway department themselves fixed 21 of them in-house. So that was a huge savings for the town, and we were able to get roads back online much quicker than we will if you go through FEMA or federal highway transportation. In 2014, I think as we all know, we had one of the snowiest winters on record, where it snowed probably every 2 days in February. And at all times, when I was superintendent of Rehoboth, the roads were kept open and clear. That's something that I really respect the department for doing, and I think it was a good kudo for a feather in our cap, if you will. It was a very challenging year, very limited budget in Rehoboth, so keeping within budgetary concerns is always a job when you're the superintendent, but sometimes public safety supersedes that. But there's still those 2 little things that you have to keep in common sense, if you will. So before that, I basically started my career out right from high school in construction, working for the 9th largest construction company in the world, which was a great opportunity for me. They allowed me to get my construction supervisor license and become a supervisor of a masonry crew. We worked on the Northville project in Needham, Mass. After that, I worked there for, I believe, 4 years. After that, I became a maintenance mechanic for USA Today, which is the largest newspaper in the world, and actually ran the 2nd shift for that. So I have a lot of supervisory experience, if you will, in budgeting and making sure that the job gets done on time and gets done complete. I think my biggest aspect I said during my interview was, I think the best way to manage any department is take the gray areas out. Make everything black and white. You make sure that everybody in the whole department knows what the expectations are and what the finished product has to look like. And by doing so, when you're taking those gray areas out, I think it makes everybody's job easier. So that's just my general knowledge of managing, if you will.
Thank you. So welcome, and I'm thrilled and excited about you taking over for the DPW. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your leadership over at the school committee. You will be missed over there. You've had a long history, and you know, as a community, we've looked to you for your leadership when it comes to managing the schools and all of that stuff. So thank you for that. I welcome you to come to the Traffic Study Commission meetings. They're held the second Monday of every month. Happy to have you on board. They're looking forward to meeting you. Last night, of course, was, it was your first day. We could never have the expectation that you would, but I did put the invitation out there. But I wish you the best of luck. It's a huge job. Again, as the chairperson of Traffic and Transportation, I work with the DPW on a regular basis. So you'll see my face in your office an awful lot. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, Councilor Perica. And yes, my school committee experience is, I do believe if you're going to be, you have to be active in your city. You have to be involved. And the school committee at the time was a choice for me. Having 2 kids in the school district, I learned a lot. It was a very eye-opening experience when you think that it's just one door that you're walking through. As you can all know, there's actually 15 doors behind there. So it was very challenging. We had challenging times on the school committee. And I'm very proud, I think, at the end that we really got a great relationship between the city council and the school committee of all coming up. We're all from Attleboro. We want the best for Attleboro, so I do appreciate that comment. I will miss it, but I'm very excited about this opportunity to serve Attleboro in a different capacity.
Well, we'll miss you in that position, but we'll be much more appreciative of you over here.
Thank you.
Do you want to go? Okay. I just want to say, I love hearing your management philosophy. And as you've already sort of seen reiterated here, one of the things that we try to do is to, to get rid of the gray area too. That's what we're talking about our ordinances, because I think people should know what they expect. So I do enjoy your management philosophy to let people know what the expectations are. And I think people end up being happier that way. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you, Council.
Look forward to it.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. Mike, we've known each other many years, so thank you for stepping up for the city of Attleboro again in a different capacity. I echo Vice President Perica's words. You will truly be missed on the school committee, but their loss is our gain as a city as a whole, so welcome aboard. I just want to thank you, because on your first day, I had no problem texting you at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Hey, is today your first day? Got a little concern from a constituent, and I got a very happy phone call from the resident, message from the resident later on in the day. Very happy that you were able to help her out, so thank you very much for that, and you're off to a good start, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Delishio. I just think to add to that, it's very important, the communication.
Absolutely.
We don't see everything.
Yep.
The public see things, you guys hear things from your constituents. That's how we all work together. I can't, everybody thinks their problem is the biggest priority, so that's one thing we have to, get off the bat, and sometimes it's not. We have to prioritize what the work is, but everybody's thing is a priority in one way or another. We will get to it, we will respond to it. I think that's the best way. We may not get to it that day, but we'll respond and let them know when we anticipate getting over there to take care of that problem. I think it's very important. They're the ones that pay our salaries, so we have to respond to them and respect what their wishes are.
It's a great answer.
Wonderful.
Great answer.
Councilor Dolan.
Hi. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. You will be missed on the school committee, but I have no doubt that you'll be amazing at this job. And I just want to say congratulations. I'm really happy for you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan.
Councilor.
Mike, welcome aboard. As I chaired the Public Works Committee for 16 years, if there's anything I can do to assist you at any time, question for history, I'm there. And I'd feel an honor if you would consult me with any concerns you have that you think I can help you with. It's a great department. I enjoyed working with them on a one-to-one basis at one time. But your expertise is well appointed, and I'll be glad to see you there. It's a big job, and I'm sure you can handle it. Thank you for coming aboard.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Councilor Jackson.
Thank you. Hi, Mike.
Thank you.
I think we're all excited, it sounds like, to have you on board. This is great. I think what impressed me the most was when reading your resume, you started in the trenches. So to me, as an employee, seeing a new boss coming in, it's nice to see that you did the job that they do, that you had already done that, so you know what it's all about to start from the bottom and then work your way up, so to speak. So that impresses me a lot. That and the fact that yesterday when I was at the Public Works yard. I asked, I said, hey, what do you guys think, And they're pretty happy about you coming on board as well. So that makes me feel really, really good. But let me just give you a suggestion. If you feel that you have to go to Mr. Blair, he's former Public Works chief. Get through me first. Just kidding. Just kidding. All the best.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson. And yes, there is a chain of command, and I will follow that.
I'm kidding. But I would like to see, honestly and truly, I'd like to see all of our departments, because each department has their own fleet of trucks. But they're not theirs. I mean, they're theirs for their department, but I'd like to see them all work together, especially at times like this, when we have storms and, snowstorms, and now you're going into this flood watch. So I would like to see everybody come together and share their fleets. So if you can get that together, that would be great. That would be awesome. I'd like to see more of that, more communication between the departments, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's a good thing. But anyways, welcome. I'm very happy for you.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson. And you're absolutely right. When we have a snowstorm or any type of natural disaster, I think we need to, it's all hands on deck. It doesn't matter what department you work for. We're all serving the city. We need to work together to get the job done in the most timeliest way we can. And then we go back to our individual jobs and responsibilities. So it's very important that when something like this strikes, that we are able to get all hands on deck on it as much as we can. And I also like to add that I truly appreciate, when I was from Rehoboth, you were Senator Timothy's aide, and you helped us dearly over there with Federal Highway and Mass DOT getting bridge work done over there. So truly appreciate that help in the past, too. So thank you, Council.
President
No.
So I'm going to be really brief, but I have lived in Attleboro for 30 years in the same place. And in every snowstorm, my dead-end street never gets done. Never does. And it's always icy, and it's always messy. And I had my grandchildren on that day, and I must have said 100 times, oh my God, look at all the plows. Something is going on. Look at all the plows. I mean, they came back and forth. That I thought South Attleboro was done the best I have seen it in the 30 years I have lived there. I know that the people on my dead end were as shocked as I was that you could actually get out of your driveway, come down in the middle where it meets, you could come across without leaving a foot of snow rut, like we always did with tires. It was a magnificent job. I know some people are a little upset about sidewalks and things, but I thought that the job that was done was just incredulous. And I was excited because I could get out of my driveway. So thank you. I'm glad to see you on board as well.
Thank you, Councilor.
Anyone else have anything to say? Okay, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Before you vote, if everybody's done with their comments, do you have the email from the solicitor?
Oh,
I think you
yes,
should read that.
I do.
So I'll give some background. I got some inquiry in for Mike to know, which I think he's well aware. I got some inquiry from some constituents and some counselors about an appointment when someone is in an elected position. Mm-hmm. So we did seek an opinion. I asked Councilor Holmes to seek an opinion from the solicitor so that there was no question about the fact that we are doing the right thing, and the opinion confirms that. So if you don't mind reading that into the record before we vote, I think then we can move to vote.
I definitely will. I know you've been so helpful.
That's okay.
You've helped me. No, just with this committee and everything, I feel like you've got the ball rolling. So there were some people that were asking questions, so I can read this to you. Dear City Councilor Holmes, you have requested a legal opinion on whether former Attleboro School Committee member may be immediately appointed to the Attleboro Superintendent of Department of Public Works. I understand that Mr. Mike Tyler, a recently re-elected Attleboro School Committee member, would like to serve as Superintendent of DPW of the city full-time after stepping down from the school committee. The Superintendent of the DPW is as a compensated position appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Attleboro City Council. Under the Massachusetts ethics law, if the school committee member steps down from the school committee, he may take the superintendent of DPW position with no waiting period and no violation of the Massachusetts Conflict of Interest Law. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 268A. I hope you find this information useful. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any further questions. I think that this is Mr. Tyler is somebody that really does support the city and wants to be here, and I'm not thinking anybody would have an issue with that. Are there any other questions or discussion after hearing that letter? Okay, so I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? An aye for me too. No? Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in.
I said aye, but not in the committee, so.
Much.
Okay.
Do you have any?
I do. I have two other pieces of business. So from the docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to confirm the temporary appointment of Derek Corsi of 467 7 Mile Road, Hope, Rhode Island, to fill an unexpired term of Superintendent of Parks and Forestry. Thank you. Mr. Corsi's... Peter. So Mr. Corsi is also here, so would you like to step forward and similarly just introduce yourself to the council and tell us a little bit about your experience?
Okay. Well, I'm Derek Corsi, 467 7 Mile Road, Hope, Rhode Island. I'm a 2008 graduate of the University of Rhode Island. I have a bachelor's in landscape architecture with a minor in community planning. After graduating college, I worked at a small landscape architecture firm in Newport, Rhode Island. About 6 months later, I was laid off due to the recession. So after that point in time, me and a friend of mine who also has a degree in landscape architecture started a landscape business. Did all types of landscaping, construction, design, maintenance. We had over 175 accounts, including commercial and residential, many shopping centers, all of the police car dealerships. And I had upwards of 12 employees at certain points during that time. In 2014, we decided to sell the business off because so much competition, there wasn't a big profit margin in it, and I became employed by the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council as a Greenway Maintenance Director. And what the Watershed Council is an environmental nonprofit. And with that environmental nonprofit, they have 7 miles of greenway, which runs alongside the river. And I was basically in charge of running the maintenance of the greenway, along with the 4 parks that were attached to it, as well as doing budgeting for equipment, hiring of employees, and also being the general contractor for bigger projects. Any questions?
I have to say that. I'm just teasing you. I think I'm supposed to say that. Discussion.
I do have one question. Now, I think one of the things I remember from the past when we did this is that, don't you have to have a tree cutting?
An arborist license?
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have an arborist license?
Everything's Rhode Island, and I was told I have 6 months to get the licenses, which I have no problem getting. I have them all in Rhode Island, but of course it doesn't.
But you do have them from another state?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
Wonderful. Yeah, good. Thank you.
So just to, Ms. Hall, there in our ordinance book, there are a variety of licensure where he has to know how to spray,
Applicator's license, all that type of stuff.
all of those kinds of things, and we do typically give individuals a amount of time to be able to transfer those things over. So, if I may, so it's a pretty hefty department over there. You have 4 departments to manage, including a zoo. Do you have any zoo experience?
No zoo experience.
No zoo experience, okay. Animal control experience.
No animal control.
Okay, I think that similarly to your multiple miles of greenway and the variety of parks. I mean, that's what one of our favorite things to do over the course of the last 10 years is to create new parks here in the city. So there's a vast majority. Some are managed by the recreation department. Some are managed by your new department.
Yep.
And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard, Derek. If I could, to President Cooper through the chair. I know sometimes when people come down, you ask about photosynthesis. I don't know if this would be a bit of a layup.
Yeah, right? Betty knows. Yeah, if I may, I usually ask the Youth Commission a question, and I need to get my new question ready because the appointments are about to come down in February. But I do want to make a comment about the zoo and animal control. So what I would say about those two departments where you might be green, parks and forestry, you have great leaders in those departments, and so you stand to learn quite a bit, and I see that as an opportunity.
And that's what I intend to do, even with the Parks Department. You know, I've tried to visit almost all the parks. Everything is in really great condition. I was really impressed by just the maintenance and the upkeep the parks have. Working a lot in Providence and Johnston, they don't really have the best maintenance and upkeep, and I was just pleasantly surprised. So, you know, entering this position, you have to lean on the people that have been there and have been doing a good job. And I'm just excited to step in, learn from them, and work with them to make everything much better.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Dole.
I just want to say welcome aboard and congratulations, and I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
Hi, Derek.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here tonight. Like the other counselors have mentioned, you are going to have some great people to work with. The zoo has phenomenal people over there. And you know, even Dennis Walsh, being the recreation department head and stepped up to save his employees' positions. He took over this position a while ago. He didn't have any zoo experience.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he did. I don't know. True. Yeah, and he's done a great job. Don't hesitate to lean on them. Just, you know, for advice and
absolutely.
Attleboro's a city, a community that, you know, embraces new people coming in and take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I've read up on Mr. Almeida.
Oh my goodness.
He's like a living legend, and I know it's big shoes to step into, but you know, I know the Parks Department, that's like his baby, and the last thing I want to do is disappoint him, and I would like to look forward to meeting him and kind of getting his vision and working with him still.
Yeah, he's a good person to have go around with you, you know.
Yeah.
I can remember going to him once, no, actually I did twice, and asked him about 2 trees. Son, you gotta get rid of these trees. They're blocking you. When you're trying to pull out of the road, you can't see when you're taking a left. He went down and looked, he says, Kate, we're not taking down those trees. Those are healthy trees. We just need to clean the brush that's all around. And gosh darn it, he was right. That's what he did. He sent them down, cleaned out the brush, and it's clear view from here. But I wanted that tree down, but he knows. So yeah, take him around with you. I bet he'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? So we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, sorry.
Aye. All those opposed? Oh, the motion passes. Thank you. I just have one other thing.
You're all
So,
set. Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to the body to transfer $658.98 from account 8300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1541100051100 Council on Aging salary regarding the need to pay a resident who completed 60 hours in fiscal year 2018 for the senior tax work-off program, and she sold her house prior to receiving the abatement. Thank you. Any questions? So there was a letter that was included, a resident that just completed her for the tax work-off program, so we're just transferring the money over so she can get paid for that. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay. Let's see. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. That's meeting adjourned at...
Conclude the business of the, you want to conclude the business of the committee?
Okay, I will conclude the business of Personnel and Human Services Committee
At?
at
7:40.
7:40.
7:49.
7:49, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Very good.
Well done.
Well done, good job.
So I'd like to call the Committee of Capital Improvements and City Development to order at 7:49. Sitting on the Capital Improvements Committee is Councilor Dolan as my vice chair and Councilor Hall as my third member. I have one motion to bring for you tonight and a discussion about some other matters. From the docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $15,634.33 from Fund 351-599-000 Fire and Police Equipment, Other Financing Uses, Fund 3542499-000 Fiscal Year 16 Equipment Authorization, Other Financing Sources, relative to the balance from Fire and Police Vehicle Equipment project that has been completed, to be transferred in order to reduce the fiscal year 18 BAN for the fiscal year 16 Equipment Authorization Project.
Second.
Thank you. We did receive a communication from the mayor, which I tracked through a docket of January 2nd on page 2 of 7 at the bottom of the page. Item number 1, the communication read that the mayor respectively submitted a communication from City Auditor Deborah Gould regarding a request to transfer funds from the Capital Project Fund 351 to Fund 3542, since the Fire and Police Vehicle Equipment Project has been completed, and it's been verified by City Treasurer Laura Gignac that the balance may be used to reduce the fiscal year 18 ban. Therefore, the mayor sent down a request for the transfer, and everything seems to be in order. It seems to be a routine transfer of monies from what's left over from one project to be able to be used for another. Are there any questions or comments or concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for an order. A motion to pass. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That completes the motions I have to discuss tonight, but there were a couple of matters that we did vote out of the council last meeting, and one issue that I'm still doing some research on that we're going to have to deal with in 2 weeks. So I have gotten the details on the senior housing HVAC that was a mystery to us, so that will be able to go out into the council next week. And I have received all the details we needed on the Tilda B. Thone Phase 2 and on the mowers for the Recreation and Parks Commission. So we will be able to move that out into the council next week. I have not yet, but I may, by the time the meeting takes place, get additional details on the $50,000 for the Civil War statue. And I'd like to see that contract and that grant application, and I'll have it circulated to you so that you can get a look at it as well. And beyond that, there's a few other issues that I want to talk to the mayor about, and President Cooper is giving me an assist on that, and I appreciate the assistance, President Cooper. And I will bring the items to you when I feel comfortable that we're ready to go. And I'll be careful not to put the city into any jeopardy where there might need to do something waiting for us. I don't want that to happen. So that concludes my comments for this evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion? Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. All in favor? Aye. I declare the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee adjourned at 8:52.
7:53.
7:53.
7:53, that's what it is. Thank you.
I call the Transportation and Traffic Committee to order at 7:53. My committee consists of myself, Councilor Conti, and Councilor Reynolds. I don't have any business to bring forward through my committee this evening. I just wanted to give a couple of quick little updates. We did have our Traffic Study Commission meeting last night. We did have some new business introduced before President Cook left with regards to Stobbs. The Traffic Study Commission feels that they have already issued there's the potential that they've already issued a judgment with regards to Stobbs and parking or restricting parking in that location. So they're doing some research right now to find out when and where that took place and what their recommendation was. I have been in touch with Tim Sullivan, the president of Bishop Fee High School. I have the expectation, I had the flu when I saw him, the poor thing. So he has invited me to come over to Feehan to have a discussion and a tour and kind of learn a little bit more about some of their construction projects that are taking place over there that may have effect on the parking circumstances over on Stobbs, Hallcott, and Commonwealth Avenue. So that is something that we are working on. The Traffic Study Commission, I have the expectation, would issue a recommendation at our next meeting in February. In addition to that, many of the things that are traffic related, I need to have a conversation with the new DPW director, but I figured I'd give him a little bit of time to get his feet planted on the ground before those kinds of things happen, specifically as it pertains to like Riverbank Road and Mechanic Street. But the new business was introduced so that we have time to figure that out before they repave it in the springtime. So I'm very confident that I'll be able to have a recommendation from the Traffic Study Commission and a conversation with the DPW director at that time as well. This is also a very pleasant reminder that next week, during our first full council meeting, we will have a public hearing as it pertains to the seasonal restriction on Beagle Club Road. So have a snack before you come. Bring a water. Councilor Reynolds, I know that there are individuals that that would like to come, so if you could have some outreach to them to make sure that they're aware of that would be terrific. It is my hope that we'll be able to, I'm sure that with President Cooper's guidance, we'll be able to maintain a very polite discussion. And as a reminder, a public hearing is for us to ask clarifying questions and not really issue declarative statements or what our decisions will be. So I just want to try and make sure that we speak specifically to that seasonal parking restriction. And if anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to send an email to Virginia and she'll get it out to me. Other than that, you've been updated as it pertains to traffic and transportation. I call for an adjournment at 7:56. Reynolds, Conti, want to give me a second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 7:57.
I would like to call Budget and Appropriations to order at 7:57. I don't have any business that I'm going to bring out tonight, but I do want to welcome Vice Chair Mr. Kobus and Mr. Conti as my third member. I'm going to be meeting with Deb Gould at some point this week. So I will be calling for a committee meeting next week before the meeting in hopes to bring out the couple of pieces of business that are in there. Just want to make sure that I have my arms wrapped around everything before I bring it out. Tonight I sent everyone through our administrative assistant, Virginia Stewart, 2 pieces of documentation, which is one's going to be a glossary, a 30-page glossary of budgetary terms. So as we go through the process this year, it's important that it's not just from whenever the budget is presented to 45 days after. It's a working, living document all year round. The other one is basically a budget 101, and I know we were talking about this not too long ago, but this will be my 5th budget, and there's still a lot I don't know. It's a very cumbersome, very complex, very ponderous budget. So Barry Lacasse sent me the glossary, sent me the presentation, so I would would ask really that everyone take a few minutes, go over it, familiarize yourself with it, so when we do start the budget hearings, several weeks from now, we'll still be ready to go. The other thing I'm looking at putting together and working with Budget Administration Director Barry Lacasse, City Auditor Deb Gould, and City Treasurer Laura Gignac is kind of a presentation, a workshop around the budget, so we can understand what our role is in this process, what each of the department heads' roles are, so we can have more meaningful conversations and dialogue when the department heads come down. Let's see. So really, I think that's about it. I don't know if there's any questions or concerns. Councilor Cooper? President Cooper, sorry.
2 things.
Of course.
One is that I did, you have these loan orders in your communication. I did ask Mayor Haro to give us, in his next communication to us, an update on these loan orders. It's in terms of his position and what he thought was making sure that his priorities were consistent with these loan orders before we voted out $6.23 million between capital improvements. He's going to do the same thing for Rick's committee, the items in Rick's committee as well. So that's one thing. Secondly, you know, generally, if we were in an off year, we would have had an update from Barry sometime December, January. So I was hoping that with the new counselors, before they get the budget, generally the second week in May, that he could come down sooner rather than later, not, you know, either the next committee meeting or the, you know, have a committee meeting before the following meeting, which I don't like to do. But we could get an update from him, but level set with everyone and the new counselors to get them sort of up to speed before they get all the munis reports as part of the budget submission.
Absolutely.
At least to have some familiarity with looking at, you know, last year, this year, what's left, how much is left in those funds, I think would be an important thing.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. So I spoke with Barry, Laura, and Deb Gould, and I'm going to actually have scheduled quarterly updates from not just Barry, but from Laura, and Deb Gould said she'll come down when necessary. So I think it's important. We have a lot of debt coming off the books, going back on. We have some OPEB updates, so the treasurer will come down, review all that with us, and I think it's a very fair point. I'd love to, and I'm going to be talking with the mayor the next week or two anyway. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into this. So I want to make sure that we have the tools in our toolbox that we need to be successful with this. Councilor Conti?
Mr. Chairman, I'm heartened by your words. I am looking forward to serving under you in the Budget Committee. 2 points I would like to make is that we will do well to follow our intentions and goals to make the budget and administration meetings with the department heads meaningful, because 92% of that budget is contractual, and we can't do anything about it. So there's little value in even concentrating on it, but it's the day-to-day operation outside of those contractual commitments that really makes the department hum, and I would like to see our budget and administration committee focus on that in our session. The other thing is that in the last term, Councilor Hall and I attended several school finance committee meetings at their invitation, and it's not because we were invited, it was because we were interested in trying to learn what the school finance budget, and Councilor Dolan attended a couple as well after the election, and found that budget is as complicated as ours and is even more contractually tied up than the city budget, that 96% of the school budget is contractual. But I don't think I'm speaking out of term in saying that school finance committee would be heartened to see us attend at least one of their meetings, which are the first Wednesday of the month. February 7th is the next one at 5:30, I think. I'll confirm this, and I'll make sure that Virginia can circulate that among us. They've already sent me the finance package for the next meeting, which is really great. You can go through and see what's going on before you go to the meeting, once you learn what the budget is. But I think that the closer communications between our committee, Mr. Chairman, and that finance committee chairman will do the city some good. And I think Council Hall would concur with me. We both learned a tremendous amount about budgeting and finance from the brilliant Mr. Furtado and the very open Chairman Larson. And that concludes my comments.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Councilor. I'd spoken with President Cooper as well as Vice President Perica. One thing that I want to work on, and I'm not at a point where I wanted to really bring it up tonight, but I see no harm in it. I want to see more synergy between our committee and the Finance Committee, because so much of what each other's committees do, it's really kind of parallel. So I think it's important that they understand the process we go through, we understand the process we go through, so we can have a very effective budget process going forward. So thank you for your comments. Any other thoughts, comments? Seeing none, I would call. Is it chair always? Okay. Seeing none, I would call for an adjournment at 8:04.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:04. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Licenses Committee to To order 8:04. Members of my committee and myself, Councilor Jackson, Councilor Parika. I have one item tonight from the docket of January 2nd, 2018. I entertain a motion to approve the application for a 2018 Renewal Class 2 auto license from New England Automax, Inc. of 1199 Worcester Road, Framingham, Mass. DBA Automax Pre-Owned, 800 Washington Street, Attleboro, for 40 customer parking spaces and 60 display spaces.
Second.
So, I went down there, so they filed their application late. I went down there to see if I could find somebody to meet, and counted cars in sub-zero temperatures. And the only person there that I was able to speak to was the sales manager. And after counting all the cars, they were over on their display. It's not a large place. I don't know if anybody. It's across the street from Dell's. The cars weren't jammed in. It wasn't anything crazy, but for some reason, it's kind of a small space, and they have 40 customer spaces and 60 display, so they were over. So I did put out a few calls, and I have been speaking to the director of operations for them. We were trying to figure out how to make this work, so really the only way to make it work that we discussed was to remove his extra cars. And he promised me he would do that. He was going by the license from the previous owner. That's why there was 40 and 60, even though he feels like it doesn't make sense either, because he really needs more display spaces. So he will amend his license application at some point. But for now, I told him the only way to get his license now is to remove the extra cars that he has for display. And he assured me that he would do that, and that was today when I spoke to him. So I was hoping to vote it out of committee tonight, and then go back down, check, make sure he did what was asked of him, and hopefully be able to issue his license next week.
Hi. We had several conversations about this, and were you able to get the applicant's contact information from the director of operations?
The owners?
Yes.
No. I can though.
Okay.
We're like best friends now.
Yeah. Let me back up a little bit. I think you may have been a little bit nicer than I'll be. So when Councilor Dolan went to the location, she did count cars in sub-zero temperatures and called me with some concerns, and we tried to be business friendly and in fact offered him the opportunity to amend. That can't be done because that would require a public hearing before we gave this. So we did try to be business friendly, but an antenna went right up when she asked the sales manager and the director of operations, are they the same person?
No.
For the applicant whose name is on the application for contact information, and didn't get it. So I want to make sure that, and there's no spot for it on the application, but when someone from the city comes, if your building was burning down and you couldn't get the person whose name is on the application's information, to me that sort of feels sort of uncomfortable for me. So while I'm in favor of voting it out of the committee tonight to keep things moving in, the director of operations, I think, made some commitments to move the cars and to do some things. And Councilor Dolan can tell us whether or not she specifically asked the director of ops for that information. But that really sort of, if this sales manager or director of ops had a problem, you mean to tell me they can't get in touch with the owner? I'm perplexed by that.
Just to clarify, the sales manager was unable to give me the information. The GM was unable to give me the information. And just in all fairness, the director of operations, I did not ask him for contact information from the owner.
So
just to clarify. But like I said, I think I'm in his phone now, because when I called him today, he knew who I was. So I can always get that information and ask him for it. But
so I appreciate that, and I think the reason for that is what I would What I want to try to avoid is for the owner to be standing in front of us because something went amiss with the fact that this person committed to moving 20 cars, he doesn't move it, or he's over 20 cars, and we don't have an opportunity to get in touch with him, and they stand there and say, you never told me I needed to. So just want to afford the applicant on the piece of paper the opportunity to do that. And so that's the reason for my pause and hesitation, but I think vote it out of committee tonight, get that information, and make sure that they are aware of what they need to do to get the license, and then move forward next week.
Case? Thank you. You know what, just a suggestion, maybe just give them a call tomorrow and ask them, whoever it is your contact person is, to have the owner call you specifically, and then you can speak to the owner, and then you can say to him, now what's your contact information so I can let you know what's going on. That's probably the best way to handle it. That way you know you've spoken with him, he's called you, you got a number, you know where he's at. Tell him what's going on, one-to-one.
Sounds like a plan. Vice President Parika.
This is the hardest. We all have our different jobs and different committees, but this one, I have found that the license chair is one of the most challenging positions, because the last thing that you want to do is to go down, verify a license, recognize that someone is not in compliance with their license, and then you have to come down hard on them. It's uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for them. It makes us appear that we're not business friendly. But there's a protocol that they have to go through. For us to issue their permit, they need to be in compliance with that. I think that you're a perfect person to be the license chair, because you have a nice solid backbone, so I think that's really terrific. I don't have a problem voting it out of committee, but I would like to be able to, some of the similar concerns that President Cooper has, I have as well. And again, this is another dealership that when we see it, it's a flag that should go up, and during the course of the year to go down and take a peek and make sure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, because there's a domino effect that takes place, that if we have one that's not in compliance, then others will say, well, I don't have to be in compliance either. And that was one of my concerns when I was looking at the lot layout with the 40 customer parking spaces, which is
from my impression, they just tried to just renew it, whatever it is, and we'll just do whatever we want. And again, he was very cooperative. He knew what he needed to do, and I told him, I specifically said, you have to do what everybody else has to do. So
did they give a reason why they are late? Because we have pretty much.
They did, but I think maybe. Yeah, they did.
Oh, okay.
Somebody got fired.
Well,
There's a change of position.
Change of positions.
Yes. There was okay. Because that, again, we have worked, like the license committee historically has worked to make sure that everyone comes into compliance, and we've changed the ordinance, and then we had to have 16, public hearings for anyone who was late, and it was really something to encourage the businesses to make sure that they're on time. So, so those are some of my concerns. If we're late and we had employee replacement, we have a lot layout that isn't necessarily accurate, I'm concerned as well. So
they didn't realize they were late until we called them and said, hello, do you want to renew your license? So it was, and I just have to assume they're being honest. And I told him that he needs to move the cars, he needs to get the cars off the property. Assured me it would happen. I told him, I said, I'll be back down to count them again, and he was completely fine. He didn't give me any trouble at all.
Excellent.
So I'm hoping smooth sailing.
Great job. Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, anything? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that concludes my business.
Motion passes.
Oh, motion passes. That concludes my business for Licenses Committee. I move to adjourn at 8:13.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'd like to call to order the City Property and Claims Committee at 8:12. Right, 8:12. And the members of my committee present are myself, Councilor Blair, and Councilor Holmes. So I have 5 motions on the docket tonight. If From the supplemental docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to accept the following donations to the Veterans Department. $1,000 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Attleboro Elks Lodge, number 1014, $300 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from DAV Chapter 91 of Attleboro, and $300 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Holiday Spirit Committee.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Myself, aye. That motion passes. From the docket of January 2nd, 2018, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of $50 in Stop and Shop gift certificates from Larry Qualia to the Veterans Department.
Second.
All those, any comments, concerns, questions? Okay, and again, it's pretty self-explanatory, and we thank Larry. You know, he's always doing things like this, so it's great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to declare the following water department as surplus, water department items, it should say, as surplus and available for disposition. One Halmar Robicon 300 horsepower VFD model number ID-PWM, and the condition is obsolete. 4 Halmar Robicon 50 horsepower VFD model number ID-PWM, and that's obsolete. And 15 fire hydrants and associated parts and piping, they are damaged.
Second.
Second.
Again, you know, if they're obsolete, they can't be repaired, and the ones that are damaged, you know, need to be new. So any other concerns, comments, questions?
Excuse me, Sarah, they scrap those out, basically.
Do they scrap them out?
Yeah, the hydrants.
I didn't call to ask about that, but as far as I know from previous years, we do scrap them.
Yeah, just for the new councilman.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll get hydrants, valves, water meters, and whatnot, that they deem obsolete or unserviceable. Those get scrapped out, and the money for the scrap gets put back into the
Goes back into it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of $200 in market basket gift certificates from the Holiday Spirit Committee to the Council on Aging.
Second.
Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and, you know, always the Council on Aging appreciates you know, anything that they can get, and I think we thank Market Basket. There's lots of Stop and Shop. They do a lot of things like these. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. And my last one, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor in accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro to accept the donation of 6 tambourines and 2 hardwood block drums with an estimated total value of $110.14 for the Willett Music Program from the Fitzpatrick family.
Second.
And any questions, concerns? It's pretty self-explanatory, and again, thank you to the Fitzpatrick family for their donation. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. And those are all the motions that I have this evening. So what I would like to do is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. At 8:18. Thank you, Peter. 8:18, we are adjourned. All those in favor? Okay. We are adjourned.
It's at me, so I'll pick right up. And thank you for hanging around for Ordinance, Elections, and Legislative Matters Committee. So I'm opening up at 8:18. I do have one motion, but I also want to go down a few of these things to give some updates of where we're at. And since I have my committee here, myself, Councilor Holmes, Councilor Jackson, there's some discussion that I do want to have about some of these ordinances, because some of them have been here for a while. I know Councilor Delicio did his best effort, and I appreciate that, to try to get some of these things, because it's pretty complex. This is the new book that I have. Nice small reading to go through. So, and I understand there's a new update to this. The good thing, I like rules and regulations, so it's right down my alley. So I'm going to start with my first update as I go down here. First of all, there was a couple of duplicates on the original agenda, so I was able to get rid of those right away, so that worked out very, very well. And just to go back to the petition on the moratorium, I just want to make a comment about that, since that was already voted out of council. That's why we're waiting to vote that into at the large council. Excuse me, it was voted out of committee. So it's not going to be addressed here. It's already moved on to the next stage, just so everybody understands that. Let's see. And in reference to, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, what we're going to do with that. So there is a motion that I will take up, and then the one following it. So I'm going to start with the motion, which is I move to strike the following item from the docket of October 3rd, 2017, to amend Section 13-3.2 requires that a request for a permit to use any city park or rec area for political purposes. The request for a permit must be submitted 60 days in advance, and this was new business brought in by Ms. Jackson on October 19th, 2017. So I had a couple of discussions with Ms. Jackson with
Is there a second? Is there a second for that?
Oh, yes, thank you. Second. Second?
So it's
Thank you. Thank you. So, Councilor, I had discussions with Councilor Jackson and Councilor Delicio about this, and this is exactly how it reads right now, that this needs to happen. I wanted to strike this. I did try to also reach out to the person who brought this forward in the first place, and she hasn't gotten back to me. I wanted to strike this from the standpoint of I don't really understand exactly whether she wants to completely get rid of this, whether we can make some amendments. So the way I want to handle it is to delete it, to strike it, and then if I can get in touch with the individual, or the individual gets in touch with me, I'll know exactly what kind of amendments and changes she wants made to this, and then I'll bring it forward again on her behalf. Okay. So that's the way I would like to handle it, and I'll open that up for discussion.
Any discussion?
No? Everybody good with that? Okay. So then, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. And I'm going to move on to the next thing then. Ooh, that gets another one off my list, huh? So for now, so that's good. But I will keep that open, and I will continue to try to contact that person. So the last thing I looked at was the hawkers and peddlers license. And in the agenda, it says to investigate hawkers and peddlers licenses and leafletting permits with the possibility of banning door-to-door sales within the city of Attleboro. No vote here. I just want to bring up for discussion, because this is the place to do that in the committee. And this was brought in new business by Mr. Denley and Mr. Cook. So what I went through, and I looked through our ordinances, we have a very extensive ordinance that talks about hawkers, peddlers, and many other categories of these types of people that go door to door. And if you look through chapter 9 through 9/11 through 21 in the ordinance book, and if you want, you can look through it, or you can take my word for it. It is very, very good ordinance, very extensive, and it is very comparable to other ordinances in other cities, which I did, as you know, I do look up many ordinances and compared them. I did also look at the state ordinance on peddlers and hawkers, and there's an application that they have to go through. The bottom line of what I found is it's legal for these people to do that. There was nowhere in any of the documentation that I found that suggested that we could put a restriction of having to restrict people from going to door to door or from doing leaflets. The things that you can restrict these folks on is how loud their bells are, what their signs look like, hours, for instance, and they refer to it. I won't get into it totally, but it's kind of an interesting story. It goes back to what's called the Green River, Wyoming Ordinance. And what this started off was, and Frank Cook would love this if he was here, it started off in a town where there was a lot of people that worked in coal mines and railroads. And the Fuller Brush Company was coming into town. And so the Fuller Brush Company would come in at a time when these folks were trying to sleep. And that was in Green River, Wyoming. So along the way, as time went on, many cities and towns tried to use this particular ordinance to go to the Supreme Court and say that they could restrict peddlers and hawkers. And there's some very, very strict circumstances where you can do that. You'd have to show that there's a reason, overwhelming reason, why they can't do that, for instance. And I can't even think of one, to be quite honest with you, at this point in time. So what I'd like to do is, unless somebody has some difficulties with this, there's two things that I can do. If I don't strike it, because I don't really, like I said, unless there's some reason specifically, legally, that we can do it, I cannot, it doesn't look like to me that you can legally restrict them from going door to door. That you cannot do. There's other restrictions you can put on. If there is somebody that has a particular thing that they want done with this, then I will have to ask the president to take it to the legal officer and make sure, our solicitor, and make sure that legally whatever we're asking for can be done. I'll open that up. Thank you. Yes, sorry.
I'd be very concerned to have this struck rather. A lot of work went into this. And as a matter of fact, the city solicitor has already gone through it. Now, this is not to restrict any sort of activity. Under the First Amendment, you're unable to ban door-to-door because it is actually covered by freedom of speech. Former City Council President Cook and I believe we read that piece that you were talking about Wyoming. Councilor Denley, Steve Withers, the city clerk, we've put a lot of work into this, and it's not restricting it at all. What it's doing is it's making it a little more difficult financially for them to operate here. This was born out of scams that had happened from door-to-door salespeople. This has happened from violence, which has happened in people's homes due to some of these door-to-door, maybe not necessarily in our backyard, but it's true. This isn't banning it by any stretch of the imagination. This is separating door-to-door hawkers and peddlers, and the purpose is to come up with different classes. And as a matter of fact, and just given the hectic nature of the last 3 months of the previous term, it was all just a matter of getting it having housekeeping come in and putting it in order. I think that a lot of heavy lifting through a lot of feedback from this council has gone into making this an ordinance, which is and was approved by the city solicitor, as well as, and I do want to thank former President Cook for all the work that he put in on this as well. So before we strike it, I would just request that, take a deeper dive into exactly what the ordinance is, what you read about the banning. That was just the way the motion was introduced. Mm-hmm. So the plan was when we got to vote it out of committee, we were going to amend on the floor to change the classification of that specific hawkers and peddlers.
So I guess my question is to you, what exactly are you looking to do with this? That's the problem. I don't, and maybe
this sets aside
I do not understand exactly what you're asking for.
Because other hawkers and peddlers aren't going door to door. You can't ban it.
Right.
But what we can do, and I believe we talked about putting badges, we've talked about different identifiers so people know who's coming to their door and who's not. We talked about a little bit of a more in-depth licensing process, which would work in conjunction with what the state had, as well as what the city clerk has asked for. The city clerk, we talked about how he was getting calls upon calls about people showing up in a white van, and it's this big burly guy, and he has some smaller people, and they just come out, they disperse. It's set a lot of fear within the neighborhoods of the city, and that's really what that motion initially was born out of. So this isn't to say, because we can't. They're protected by the Constitution. What this is to do is to say, to the people that are scared out there by some of the stuff that's going on, it's 2018. I don't know if people need to be going door to door at this point. That's not for me to judge.
So again, I think, and maybe that's the clarification is, I'm not seeing exactly, and maybe I'm just looking for too much detail, what is being requested to be changed here. And you say do a deeper dive, but you got to kind of be more specific of what you want me to dive into. Happy to dive, but that's what I'm saying.
Well, for instance, you're saying it's a ban, it's not a ban. So what I would suggest is perhaps...
Well, I'm asking, that's what I'm saying,
sure.
Clarify. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, clarify. And perhaps maybe take some time, sit down with the city clerk and go over this. He can give you examples of some of the calls that he's received and some of the reasons why he supports this act as well.
Okay, I guess I'm... Yes, we'll start, wait a minute, we'll start going around. How about this? So we start here? Go ahead, yes.
Well, I was going to say, so are you suggesting a different word besides ban?
No, so what was happening, if I may, Chairperson?
Yes, please.
what happened in the work that the previous ordinance committee put into this was because we can't ban it because of the First Amendment. So what we looked to do, and again at the behest of City Clerk Steve Withers, was to reclassify hawkers and peddlers. So you have different licensing. So you have the Ring a Bell, you have the ice cream truck that will start to get those license requests in sooner than later. It's just to set the door-to-door hawkers and peddlers aside from the rest.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with practically everything that Jay said. I remember this conversation. We discussed this really at length. And to me, in my mind, what we were trying to say is we wanted to make it a more safe environment for the homeowner. So we were talking about, were we going to require, and it might have something to do with licensing, were we going to require them, if they were going to do this in the city, to have some kind of a badge? Something that notifies you. Is it going to be something on their vehicle? But something that would notify the homeowner, this person's coming to my door, and you might feel less, I don't want to say frightened, but you'll know exactly who's going to be doing the knocking. So maybe the discussion has to happen again briefly or something. I don't know, but I really recall that we spent a lot of time hashing this out. In fact, I made, I think at the time, a joke about, geez, can we keep political people away from our doors, you know? So I know we discussed it at length. Yes, yeah, I know we discussed it at length, and I do think we should keep it. I don't think we should strike it because there was a lot of discussion, and I think it's a good idea with the way that the country is today, and people being able, because it's not a ban, and people being able to do it, that we want to make it a little more user-friendly for our homeowners, or anyone, whether you're a homeowner, you know, rent or whatever. And that's all I have.
And President Cooper?
Thank you. So in terms of history, we did, it's my recollection that we brought this forward because we got inundated with solar and electric.
Yeah.
When we did, this was around the time of net metering and those kinds of things back in 2015. So that's one thing. I think for having refreshed my memory and reading this yesterday, again, I think what's missing from here, in my opinion, is the definition of hawker and peddler Class B and Class C and what fall into those different categories. So there would be a Class A that would require and could do X, Y, and Z. There'd be a Class B that would require and could do X, Y, and Z, and there'd be a Class C, same thing. And I think what that does, it ensures that the person coming to your door is properly identified, has the right license in place, can be asking the questions, and provides a sense of security to the person that opens the door to someone. They're identified. We've all had them, whether we've been in the yard or in the house, come up to us, and you know, when they come to my house, they get the inquisition about where's your license? Did you have one from the state? Do you have one from the city? Do you? If you don't, get out of here. But the bottom line is, what I don't see in here to provide what I see is a reminder to insert the definitions, but I don't see those definitions. And then I would, you know, bring it back to the committee after we get some additional input from the solicitor and go from there.
Gotcha. The definition is in here.
It's in the existing, I believe.
Correct. It's in the ordinance. So just for everybody's understanding, the reason why I'm saying this is there is a whole section, section 9-14, hawkers, peddlers, and selling agents, that was amended on 12/3/13, and does go through a very extensive description of what that is. I mean, it does describe what it is. So that's where I guess my confusion is that it does go through and talks about what it is. It does have a definition. So,
yeah, if I may, the only difference is that it's not in what's before the council now in terms of B and C. So, you know, Councilor Hall, perhaps a side-by-side comparison, because off the top of my head, I don't know what the differences are between the old and the new, the 13 and the 15 version. And pointing those out and getting a thumbs up or thumbs down from the council if they want to put those in place and keep it moving.
Yeah,
keep the momentum.
There's a few. Hawker, peddlers, and selling agents, hawkers and peddlers of fish, fruits, and vegetables, And it goes on, and that's what I'm saying. So through that whole thing, there's all these sections of things. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I said, boy, there's a lot of hawkers and peddlers definitions in there. So I don't know how many more you want, but.
I don't know that we necessarily need any more. I just think we need some clarity around the differences between what's there and what's in the current, most recent review from the solicitor. That's all.
Gotcha.
And we vote them up or down.
Okay, yep. Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson Hall. So one of the beauties of having a municipal council is that we have the ability to make any state law that comes down stronger. We can't make it weaker. This particular piece of business, it's my recollection, which I'll never forget, is when I had an exceptionally abusive person come and try and kick down my door to come in and talk about my electric bill. We had requests from the Council on Aging and a variety of different organizations in our community asking us for help to protect, individuals. And it's not just homeowners, it's people who live in apartments, it's in complexes, it's everywhere. And I would not be in favor of striking this piece of business. It's also specifically not necessarily related to hawkers and peddlers. This is about door-to-door sales. So I think that might it may take a little bit of your workload off, where it has to be specifically to door-to-door sales, because that's what our focus was. So that might take a little bit of that hard work off of your table there. And I think it's absolutely reasonable that through Ms. Stewart, whatever information Mr. Delisio has to forward that onto you. I mean, we're in that weird period of time where we've changed committees. We're not completely up to speed on those kinds of things. So I think that is a very simple request that can be made, and to contact the other department heads that have been involved in this. I think that'll also be helpful. But I don't think it, again, I agree with the other counselors that have spoken this evening that I don't think it's anything we want to strike right now, because good weather is coming. We're in new negotiations for the electrical contracts and things like that, and I think it would be important to try and move on this to protect our community.
And that would be extremely helpful if I could have any of the background information, because it's evident that there's a lot of sensitivity to this, rightfully so, and it would be great to have that background information, because obviously there is a lot that went on. And for me to look at this and see a sentence, it's very difficult for me to decipher what exactly is where I need to focus in on. So I do appreciate that. That would be great. Yes, Mr. Conti, yes.
Councilor Hall, I also am not in favor of striking this measure. And I just want you to know that, because you're getting a lot of this. And I think we just got done last term, after 14 years, getting a sign ordinance through. So don't be so concerned about getting this done, quickly. Dive into it like you do. Give it the, jurors. But what Councilor Denley was concerned about was strangers walking up to a door that were not registered with the city clerk, did not have positive identification, and we didn't know who they were. And that's where this all started. And in the city of Taunton, where I'm an assessor, I'm forced to wear a red lanyard with a two-sided photo city seal ID on it whenever I leave the office, so that people can quickly see that I am a city official. And that's the level that Councilor Denley wanted when this first started, is that when someone knocks on the door, you could quickly see that they have been authorized through the city clerk and the city of Attleboro to knock on their door. They're not a stranger. There's been some vetting going on before that happened. And that concludes my comments. This is going on too long.
I appreciate that. And for clarity, that's why I opened it up to the committee, because all of this is great input for me to know exactly what, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to know exactly what the drive on this and the details, so I appreciate that. Mr. Blaine?
I just give you my 2 cents.
Please.
My wife called me to come home when this started.
Yep, I remember
and I come home, and Beverly was smart enough to know what car it was, make, model, license plate number, partial. And this gentleman was very abusive at the door, to the point where Beverly had enough concern to call me. I went home, and sure enough, he was on Tyler Street, which was a couple of streets over. parked on the side of the road. And I pulled up and asked him who he was, what he was doing. Did he have a license, like
Gotcha.
Mr. Cooper? And he said no. And at first he said, it's none of your business. And it's not often that city councilor card, gives you any authority, but I did pass it through the window. And I didn't get out of the car, believe me. And I said to him that if you don't move, don't leave, and I catch you knocking on doors, I'm going to have you arrested. I'm going to make the call and have you arrested because you're not going by our rules and regulations as they were. And at that particular time, I went along with Jay and arrested. It's not strong enough. If you're going to have something, put some teeth in it and make them stand up. We had a lot of elderly people that were scared. And I don't consider my wife elderly as far as couldn't defend herself or anything, by all means. But she was petrified that day, and it takes a lot to get my wife petrified. Very abusive. That's what we had, Julie, at that time. It's not the young gentleman that's come before us. We had a couple come in that were legitimately trying to provide an income for their families. They were nice about knocking on doors and trying to sell that solar or the electric or the cable Comcast, whatever. But there's got to be regulations in place that makes it, I wouldn't say impossible, but it puts a hold on just somebody pulling up with a van and 6 or 7 people get out and they canvass the neighborhood and they scare people, whether it's selling magazines or whatever. I mean, we don't want to eliminate the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts from coming around, or the Little League and things like that.
Cookies are delicious. We want them to come to the door. I said their cookies are delicious.
But unless you're on a diet.
So what I'm, yes.
But that's
Gotcha.
just some background, Julie, and at that particular time, it was scary for a lot of people out there. So that's why it was brought forward. That's background and history. I wouldn't strike it, Julie, and I know you do a good job looking into it.
Yep.
And I'm glad it's passed over.
Councilor Jackson.
Thank you. As vice chair of this committee, I agree with Ms. Parika. Get in touch. I know you guys are on the same committee. You're on zoning together, so you guys can't get together. But you can, through emails or whatever, just pass off the information on all your items that you have concerns about, so you can get up before we strike anything.
Right.
Maybe, I think that's a good suggestion.
And I appreciate that. And just for clarity, that's why I said if or then I have to strike it. So this is what the if part of it was. And so I really do need that background information as much as I can get. And I will also talk to Mr. Withers about it. I am understanding. It looks like it was on the, what you, correct me if I'm wrong, that what you're looking for is on the front end. It's a little bit more stringent process. Because if somebody goes door to door, once they get a license and they're abusive, you have to call the police. So, so it looks like the front end is what you're looking for, is a little bit more of somebody coming in, having to sign somewhere, some kind of process that vets them, if you would, and then, any kind of like a badge or something and identifying. So that is getting me much closer to where, if there's other things besides that, if there's other things besides that too, please email me, because there is some corporate knowledge here, obviously, that I was not part of the discussion. So I want to deliver what it is you're looking for. So please, if there's something other than what I just spoke of, or more to that, please email and let me know, because I'll put that on my list of things to address. Yes, Councilor.
A lot of what you talk about, and thank you. So a lot of what you talk about is already in there.
Yes.
In what's written there, and it was born out of the discussion on the floor. Namely, I believe the bond we talked about was a $10,000 bond. The badge we talked about, but really the point of this was to weed out the scams, because we figured, and we all talked about it, that the businesses that were serious and the businesses that had the backing and the financial means to be able to put up a bond like that are the ones that we want operating in the city. Basically, we were there. It was just coming down to a housekeeping issue. And with, as I said, President Cook and I had planned to bring this out in October, but then with the elections and this special meeting, that special meeting, a special meeting for a special meeting, it just didn't end up happening. One thing you may want to consider is maybe not even put it under hawkers and peddlers and move it out altogether and have its own section for door-to-door. So, I mean, I think that we're very, very close here, and it took a lot, and Council Conti, very good parallel to the sign ordinance, I think. But to me, as a resident, I'm hearing two councilors, city councilors, who had firsthand borderline violent experiences with this. So that's why I would again, and it doesn't sound like you are, and I thank you for listening to the feedback of your peers. I'd hate to see this stricken at this point.
Great. This is why I generated the discussion, so I really, really appreciate that, because it's, if we could go around and, because of the open meeting law, and have conversations, that's differently, but we have to have them here. And this is exactly the place that we have them, so I appreciate this. Is exactly where this discussion needs to happen. So I do have some. It does sound like a good thing to do, is maybe look at a different category than hawkers and peddlers and try to separate it out. But I will take a look at that. I do have some other ordinances that other people have, and so I did get a chance to look at it, and I bet you I'll find some interesting things there. The other thing I just wanted to give everybody an update on is what we're doing with the RMD and the marijuana establishments, excuse me, which is the recreational marijuana. It's called marijuana establishments. So the first thing right now, just as an update, is we're working on, as we said, tightening up the RMD. And I am working with the solicitor and with the planning department and with the inspector. So we are looking at all of those to fix some of those concerns. We saw the measuring concern has already been addressed. I sent it to him and said, listen, you got to look at this. In going through the ordinances too, I did find some like type businesses that I also kind of looked at and said, now we've got to make all this look the same. For instance, adult bookstores and things like that had its own, that was even different from this. So in doing this, there's going to be a lot of cleanup stuff going on and a lot of standardization, hopefully, in this. Once we fix that, I've already talked to President Cooper and the solicitor, and we are going to work together, as she has a lot of experience already with other cities and towns in developing their medical marijuana establishment ordinance. So we are going to work with her very, very closely in doing that, and leverage her expertise to do that. So I just wanted everybody to know we are moving forward on both of those things right now. It's going to take some time, but the thing is with the, we do have those laws coming down. I don't know if you recently, for everybody's edification, the federal government, not so keen. So I don't know, again, how that's going to change things in the state again. So this will be a fluent document, but I do think we still need to have something ready to go, and I'll do the absolutely very best I can to make sure that we do have something that all of you will have an opportunity to look at. I'm going to try to keep it relatively basic with the same sort of securities in, and I also wanted to mention about what Mr. Conti brought up previously. In the law, there is a whole section about local control. So thank you for bringing that up. And if I am correct, I think that's what you were addressing in your last item. Go ahead.
Just as a point of order, it was my understanding that was assigned to zoning and land use, and so that wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So for. And I'm so sorry to have to say, but it isn't within your purview to discuss those kinds of things, because that's zoning and not ordinance. I don't know if I'd be correct in that.
I don't think it.
So I believe the piece of business that's in zoning and land use is relative to the tax.
It is.
But who has in their committee? That's what I was just looking for.
Right.
The medical. The recreational marijuana. Nobody, right?
Right.
So
sounds like ordinances.
if I may, Council President, I believe that
Well,
in zoning, it says to amend section 17-3.4 table of use regulations for registered marijuana dispensary uses.
Right, that's in zoning and
So
land use.
that's in zoning and land
Right.
use, which I don't necessarily know if that's specifically
Well, I
related to
think-
the tax.
But I think we had moved
it.
on to the tax part.
Yeah, so I think there's several pieces. One is the revision of the medical,
It's
which
also
is in,
here.
That the city adopt an ordinance governing the operation of a
Of
non-medical
non-medical.
marijuana establishment. That's a totally different one, and that is in zoning.
Yeah,
Right.
that's in zoning as well.
which
So
I think Council Hall was the chair of zoning and land use, so, but it's not in ordinance at the moment, so I think the two of you, if you're not on the same committees, if you are, call for a committee meeting and we'll hash out the details of all three. Because it feels like there's three things that need to be resolved, and makes more sense to me to have them in a single committee that's working through all three issues than the fragmentation that I feel like we have right now. So we can discuss that and see where things are at. But I don't want to go down the road. I don't want us to go down the road of talking about it if it's not in your committee right now, which is what I was scrambling to try to find.
Okay.
So, okay.
That's it. So I'm going to, let's see, I'll adjourn the meeting of the, I have to read this because it's three different things, ordinance, elections, and legislative matters at 9:49.
8:49.
8:49, excuse me. Looks like a 9, 8:49.
There was one, but
Do I get a second? Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. It was great, though. I was ready for it, wasn't I? Haven't done my homework.
My spot.